All right, Jerry Chestnut. Jerry's our Florida Chapter Association treasurer, and we'll call on him to give us a brief treasurer's report.
Well, like always, we're doing well. We have $19,076 in cash in the checking account, because that's for today's activity. And we have a receivable from National that we're carrying on the books for $1,490. And that's where we are.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. A couple of other announcements. You know, at the end of July, the last day in July, July 31st and August 1st and 2nd, we're having a community-wide OIG auditors training course that's been put together by Melinda and Dawn and hosted in part by the Florida chapter of the association. Many people are involved as speakers, and we'd like y'all to look for an announcement of that training opportunity coming out shortly. There'll be sign-ups available soon, perhaps even this week, on the Florida chapter of Association's Association of Inspectors General website, and we'll send out an email to everybody. So that'll be a full-featured 3-day training course. It will be free to members of the association, and for people who aren't members of the association, there's a $35 training fee, which will also result in membership for 1 year. So you heard Jerry's treasury report a moment ago. We've got a pretty good balance in our checking account now. I wonder whether or not Kim Doss is here. Kim, could you wave, please? Okay, so Kim, a member of the Florida chapter, has sent an email to the local chapter board suggesting the possibility of scholarships for people who are interested in going to the Certified Inspector General Auditor training and Certified Inspector General Investigator training, and for some reason or another their agency's funding won't permit that attendance. And for those who might be in that position, the chapter has approved in concept now, the board has approved in concept the possibility of having a scholarship, one for an auditor and one for an investigator, once each year for each. And so Chuck Faircloth is heading up a committee as our third vice president to look and see what kind of parameters we can establish to make that happen. So thanks, Kimberly, for the idea. All right, and so now I'd like to introduce our national president of the Association of Inspectors General and our chief inspector general, Melinda Miguel, to introduce our guest speaker.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon. Let's get started right away. I have a wonderful privilege this afternoon to introduce our esteemed colleague and COO of the state of Florida. He's also doing double duty as the head of the Department of Children and Families. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to you Secretary David Wilkins. I want to read just a little bit about him because I found out some of the neatest little tidbits about his life, some of his accomplishments, but a little bit about him as a man and as a father and as a person. He's a native of Kentucky, and he graduated magna cum laude from Lambeth University in 1982 from a management information systems background, a bachelor's. He was president of his student body and his fraternity. He was also a varsity scholarship athlete in basketball and tennis. What an amazing start to a very young career. But then later on, Governor Rick Scott appointed him as Secretary of the Department of Children and Families. And that's when I had the privilege to meet him and work with him on his appointment of his Inspector General, who is Chris Hurst. And we're very glad to have Chris here today. And thank you so much for not only driving our guest speaker here today, but also in doing such a great job as Inspector General and arranging him to be here today. So thank you so much, Chris. Also in March of 2012, Governor Rick Scott appointed Secretary Wilkins as Florida's Chief Operating Officer. This was the first appointment of its kind, and it's really exciting to hear his perspective as it relates to government operations. As the COO, he will assist all executive branch agencies in the increasing of efficiencies and reducing government bureaucracy. What a fantastic mission, and how the Inspector General community can partner and serve as a resource and an asset to Secretary Wilkins in his mission. So it was really important to me to ask him to come and talk with us today. In addition to all of those wonderful things that the Secretary brings to the table, he is also, in his spare time, which obviously is very little, he is also the chair of the Florida Children and Youth Cabinet. He serves on the Medicaid and Public Assistance Fraud Strike Force that Chuck just referenced, and sits on the Attorney General's Commission on Drug Abuse and Prevention. What an amazing, amazing resume and background. But let me just tell you a little bit, one more tidbit before I welcome him to the podium to speak. One of the things that I thought was just so absolutely admirable was that he was promoted to partner at Accenture at the tender age of 32. What a phenomenal, absolute, ambitious appointment. For his last 5 years of his tenure before retiring after 29 years of service with Accenture, he was in charge of the global sales organization of Accenture for the health and public service business, which was one of the 5 major businesses of the company, or the business units in the company. In addition to that, he's an active volunteer for the United Way and the Florida Baptist Children's Homes, and he serves on the board of directors of both. But then his final accomplishment that shows what a wonderful man that we have that's going to come talk with us is he also has a wife and 3 teenage daughters that live here in Tallahassee. And I'll let him share some of the details of that. But he's got some great accomplishments, including launching Orphan's Heart, which was a successful international child care services program. With that, please give a very warm applause and welcome to Secretary David Wilkins.
I need to let Melinda introduce me all the time. That's very nice. And thanks for the opportunity to come talk to you guys all today. And I think this is very timely for what you do, and definitely how you can be involved in the overall COO initiatives that we'll be talking about here in the next couple minutes. I'm new to government. I guess I can't keep saying that because now I've been here about 18 months. But when I first came to DCF, they explained this IG row, and they told me I was really blessed to have Dawn because she was one of the best. And then a few months later, Melinda told me I couldn't have her anymore. But then I was very fortunate to have Chris. But I give Chris a hard time because it seems like as soon as Chris showed, I had all these new investigations. So I've got to know Chris very well. But just like all you guys, I rely on my IG quite a bit, and we have a good trusting relationship, and I definitely couldn't do my job without you, and I hope all of y'all have that relationship with your secretaries or direct reports. I decided to come to this job really because I wanted to make a difference. There was no other agenda item. I've been in the private sector my whole life, and I just loved my job and loved what I did for a living. And but I worked with government clients for years and years, so I really got to know a lot about how government works, federal government, state governments, national governments, and I always just sort of had this desire and envy for being on this side of the fence, because the government officials and the government leaders are the ones really trying to figure out how to drive change. And I was always the consultant sort of doing the easy part once they sort of figured out what they want us to do, and we would come in and do that. But so when there was the opportunity with the governor to come in to this administration, particularly I literally I asked for the job to come to DCF, and it's really going back to my personal passion for helping children and helping those in need, and I really thought this was an opportunity to do something different. And when you come into DCF, what you find out is all of a sudden you're running a big bureaucracy, and you can get totally obsessed every day just all the daily issues and transactions that come in front of you. But what we're trying to do at DCF is we really try to put together an overall strategy of where we really want to take the organization. And my simple perspective at DCF was we wanted to, in essence, get the community really involved in our mission. And that the issue of helping those in need really shouldn't be a government function. It should be a community function. And we should be an integrator of community activities, not just a sole deliverer of a bunch of specialized government entitlement programs. And so we're trying to change that mindset, and I'm just excited to see that happening in communities where we're getting more provider organizations, community-based organizations really wanting to step in and take responsibility for the challenges in their communities. And one of the ways we started doing a lot of these projects is we had to pay for them. So, you know, in the first year, we really looked at efficiency from in the DCF perspective on where we could cut costs, where we could do things differently to try to drive change. And based on a lot of those types of initiatives that I kept talking to the governor about, you know, the governor then turned around and said, well, can you apply a lot of these ideas to the other agencies? And you know, you can't say no to the governor. And but at the same time, I said, but you know, my passion is with DCF, and we've started a lot of big projects there that I didn't want to walk away from. So that's sort of why I'm sort of doing double duty between the DCF job and the COO job. So the COO job, what's really cool about it is it doesn't exist, so I'm making it up as I go along. And no one can criticize me that I'm not doing what's statutorily defined to do, because if I don't want to do it, I just change the plans. But really the premise of this is going to be pretty amazing if we can pull it off, because you know what I'm doing is what I'm asking now all the other agencies to do, and what you know many of you will be asked to do as well, which is figure out how to do your day job and figure out how to help the enterprise at the same time. And you know, in the private sector, that was a standard way you did work in a company. You know, if you wanted to get ahead in a company, is you figured out how to do your job, and then you figured out how to do your boss's job, and your boss figures out how to do his boss's job, and you know, and it's the whole leverage model that makes things work. And you know, the governor is just very passionate about cost efficiency and trying to run government more like business. And of course, there's so much that you can't do that, and everybody knows that you know that it is very different, as designed to be different. But at the same time, there's just so many things that we can really learn from the private sector, and the private sector has done the R&D types of investments to show you know what types of business efficiency techniques work and which ones don't work. And so what we are trying to do in the COO initiative is really how can we reduce costs and improve efficiency at the same time. And so we went through an initial exercise for a month where I went around and met with every one of your bosses. You know, I met with every agency head and basically interviewed them on their thoughts, collected information from the efficiency task force and from other groups of people that are running different types of efficiency initiatives, sort of figure out what's working, what's not, what do we need to do different. And so what we've now laid out is a plan of 8 major projects that we're wanting to take on right now with a focus primarily of all these are sort of driving towards next legislative session to both take out a lot of cost in state government and also sort of change some of the mindsets of how we operate the different agencies. And the project can really be divided into sort of 3 buckets. Number 1 is a set of projects that are really all about taking cost out of state operations. Number 2 is a couple of projects around how to improve the productivity of the state employee, the workforce. And then number 3 is how to design a couple of key infrastructure components that need to be in place for the long term that don't exist anymore, i.e. the IT function in the state. If you notice, you know, we deleted AEIT this year, and so you know we've got to design some new capability there. And then there's a couple other places where we're looking at some legislation to create some new capability. So those are sort of the 3 buckets. And let me talk about the employee